Welcome back to Clarity Combos for Wedding Pros podcast. I'm your host, Aislinn, and today's episode is a snippet from the What to Focus On Challenge, where I guide you through 3 days of discovering what you need to work on in your wedding business to lock in and blow up your income. If you like this episode and want to know more about my offers, go to the show notes to explore more ways that we can work together. So let's talk about what to focus on if you bend over backwards for clients. So this presents itself in a lot of different ways. But what's so fascinating is that when we are so in our business and we are so in our client communication and we don't have any kind of boundaries around when we answer things or when we're doing things or what the process is. And so we just kind of let the client dictate what the process is. In those moments, it is a core issue of a boundary issue. But what happens is if you are bending over backwards for your current clients, A, you're going to get burnt out, but B, it's going to keep your capacity capped basically at all times. Your capacity is never going to allow you to have more clients booking you when you are already feeling like your nervous system is like in overload mode because you're bending over backwards for people. And I'll be honest, not all of your clients even want you to bend over backwards. They would prefer you to have a process. They would prefer you to have boundaries. So at its core, if you feel like you are bending over backwards for clients, this is a boundary issue at its core. And it's also an issue of not knowing where to spend your time. So if you have time to be at your client's beck and call 24 hours a day, you're attached to your email 24 hours a day, you are not working on the important things that are actually going to move your business forward. Clients who want you to bend over backwards for them are always going to be moving the goalposts of how much they need from you. So when you are bending over backwards to clients to soothe them, it's almost like this way of like soothing yourself by keeping them happy and by keeping them calm. You can keep yourself grounded and calm without their emotions becoming your own. There's a couple of practical ways to do this. So if you currently feel like you do have like boundary things like that need to get cleaned up in your business, here's some of the practical things I would recommend. Number 1, put more distance between you and answering your clients. You need to realize that if they ask for something, sometimes the answer can actually be no, or it could be yes, and X that you asked for is X amount of money, or it's going to take X amount of time. It's not, okay, they asked me a question, I need to get it to them immediately. Most of your clients are not even asking for that immediacy unless you have like set the expectation that that's like how your process is. And honestly, it's at a detriment to you and your own mental and personal health. And it's also at a detriment to your client because what if you can't like be able to like respond immediately? So you need to put more distance between you and answering your clients. And I'm not saying like you need to be like, oh, I'm never available for my clients or like, oh, they should never ask me questions. That is not what I'm saying. I am saying you need to set up boundaries and expectations for like when you will respond to people. And that also gives you more time to decide what you want to give or decide how you want to respond instead of being in this like reactionary state. So the next practical thing to focus on if you feel like you're bending over backwards for clients is when you feel yourself leaning in to offer more or offer something, I want you to pause. I want you to ask yourself, did they explicitly ask for X? Did they explicitly ask for whatever it is they're asking for? A lot of times what happens is we will try to almost like give before they've asked for the thing. So unless they've explicitly asked for the X thing, like whatever they've asked for, if no, I want you to pause. I don't want you to offer something until they've asked for it. And I want you to just practice this and see how it feels. If yes, if they have asked you explicitly for something, I want you to ask yourself if this is something that you want to do or something you want to give, and is it part of your process? So if they ask you like, hey, like I know we have, 8 hours of wedding coverage booked. We would love to have you there for 15 hours. Pause. Take a pause. Take a pause. Pause right there. Instead of offering like, oh, of course we can be there for 15 hours. They're like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we can absolutely do that. Yeah, for sure. 15 hours, like totally. Pause. You need to ask yourself, is this something that I want to do or want to give? Number 1. And then number 2, does it even make sense? We always want to ask, does it make sense? But we need to ask ourselves, is this something I want to do? Instead of being like, oh, 15 hours? Like, yeah, like, do you also want a second shooter? do not do that. Don't do that unless you were saying, do you want a second shooter? And then you're going to go invoice them. So I want you guys to pause before you feel like you're like leaning in to offer more or offer something to your clients. And this is like, I know this can sound like a little bit harsh in some ways, but you will find like so much more peace in the relationships that you have with your clients when you're not trying to basically tell them what their needs are. They have to explicitly tell you what their needs are. So if you are someone who is struggling with bending over backwards for clients or setting boundaries with clients, this is a focus on systems and mindset. So if you're struggling with bending over backwards for clients, you need to have focus on your boundaries and your systems. So you need to ask yourself, what systems do I have in place that are giving me space to respond to my clients? So for example, office hours. Office hours are amazing. I had office hours for years and years and years. My clients inside of my programs know when I'm going to come in, and they also know like the times that I'm not going to be there. We also could do things like setting a set amount of meetings if you're a wedding photographer. This was something that I did maybe 2020, maybe 2021, where I was having clients who were like asking a lot of questions or asking for a lot of meetings. And so in our contract, we actually put in there, they had a certain amount of meetings. Anything outside of that was going to be an extra fee. And we had clients pay it happily, because they were given the option of, this is something I want. And I wasn't resentful of like, oh, I have to go to another meeting because they asked for it. They already are past their like allotted amount of meetings. They are choosing to pay for additional meetings. Amazing. I'm going to show up. Of course I'm going to show up. So some of the different systems that you can have inside of your business when you feel like you might be bending over backwards for clients include office hours and setting like an amount of meetings. And then you also need to focus on asking yourself this: what do I get out of bending over backwards for clients? What do I get from bending over backwards for clients? And is this something I need to get from this space? So a lot of times when we are bending over backwards for clients, it's because we want to have some kind of control over things outside of ourselves. When we're bending over backwards for clients, a lot of times it's a way to self-soothe. It's a way to soothe their emotions so that we feel more grounded. Another thing that we have to think about with like bending over backwards for clients is like sometimes people are askers and sometimes people are guessers. Sometimes there are people out there in this world, and you might be one of them, and I love you for it. You are someone who's going to ask the question, and the answer can be no. You just need to know the information. You just need to know that you asked the question and you did everything you could. So I, in most situations, have become an asker. I used to be a guesser. A guesser is someone who wants you to guess what they want. And I'm sure you have people in your life like this. You might be one of these people. I am not saying that you have to be an asker or a guesser, and they're very hard lines. There are different situations where I am like both of those things. So I want you to think about like maybe your clients, if they're asking something, are askers. They're not saying that the answer has to be yes. They just want to know the information. So I want you guys to think about the mindset side of this if you're struggling with bending over backwards for clients. And I also want you to think about the actual systems of this. What are the systems that are making it easy for me to bend over backwards? Let's look at those. What are the mindsets that are keeping me in this pattern of continuing to kind of overstep my own boundaries? And this might like kind of sting a little bit, but one of the things that I like to think about if I start to feel like I'm trying to offer too much, or I'm trying to like kind of lean forward and offer something somebody hasn't asked for, I ask myself, is this like a self-abandoning moment? Is this a moment where I am abandoning my own needs and my own internal like experience in order to have somebody else happy, in order to have somebody else feel soothed and grounded? Because that's their responsibility. It's their responsibility to handle their own emotions and regulate their own emotions. It's my responsibility to regulate mine. So asking yourself this question of like, what am I getting out of bending over backwards for this person? Like, what am I getting out of this? Why am I choosing to do this? Because right now it might not be a conscious choice, but this is part of like what this like what to focus on challenge is to show you where you're making choices and show you where you're making different decisions and being more conscious about what you're choosing to do moving forward. All right, my friends, I hope that this has been really enlightening for you and really activating for you. And just remember, I decide. I decide, I choose, I am going to take this action, I decide. Thanks for listening to today's Clarity Combos for Wedding Pros episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out the show notes below for the educational shop and mentorship options. I'll see you in the next episode.